the cloud. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Psychic Wives podcast. This is episode 2 of our podcast. I'm Jerry Carabin.
I'm Kathy Rumsey.
And I'm Ginger Hendry.
And we should all say, after we do that, we should all go, and we are the Psychic Wives, like together, right? That would be like totally cheesy. Anyway, so welcome to our podcast. This is our second episode, as I say. Today we're calling that episode, How Did You Know and How Does It Work? And we're going to talk about all things intuitive and how we found that we were intuitive and how it works for us and how we receive information, stuff like that. But we did want to say first and foremost, if you didn't know, we are available on iTunes. And so to find that link, go to our website. Our website is www.thepsychicwives.com, and you can click on the podcast link and you can see the podcast right there. There's a way there to subscribe to it, whether you're on Android or whatever, but then there's also the link right there to the iTunes, and it really does help us out so much if you go to that and like us or leave us a review or whatever on iTunes, so you can find us there too. So let's go ahead and get started. Again, we're talking how did you know and how does it work? So I think one of the first questions that people kind of ask us a lot, and let's just talk about this, is how did we realize that there was something more than stuff? You know what I mean? I don't even know what to say. How did we realize there was something more out there? The intuitive. Ginger, how did you realize?
I love this question because somebody actually did ask me this a few years ago. And when I really thought about it, and I had never thought about it before, I never not believed, ever. Not believed. And I was trying to think of how come. And I think for me, I lost my dad when I was 3. I grew up in a Catholic house, and the belief was, and what I'm sure I was told, was he's in heaven, and when you get to heaven, you'll see him. So it never was life ends and everything's right here. It was there is something more. And my whole context of growing up, I had a lot of death in my family at a very young age, and that's what we were taught. So I knew that. I hadn't really a thought process around intuition more, except for that there was more than what I could see right in front of me. So always believed.
Yeah. Yeah, always. Kathy, how about you?
You know, I as far back as I can remember around the intuition, just I knew things. I didn't know how I knew them. I knew things about people. Not that I knew things about people, but it was that phrase that people use, or well, at least we use it. People, their insides don't match their outsides.
Yes.
I, from as young as I can remember, and young children are so good at this, and as are animals. Man alive, a little kid, if your insides don't match your outsides, we're
they pick it up like that.
Intuition, we're born with it. It's innate to us. And I really did just know. And I can remember having conversations. I remember specifically with my father about people that, like, we lived in a kind of a small town. And I can remember my father having like high regard for some people and me questioning him, because to me, those people were not what they appeared to be. And I knew it. I didn't know how I knew it, but I knew it. And even though I was told I was wrong and that I was being disrespectful and all those things, I didn't question myself inwardly. I pretended to my dad, like, okay. But it's so interesting as the years went on that things would come around and things would come up, and it'd be like, oh my gosh, you were right about that person or whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it was about me that I didn't doubt myself, because I think that's what happens to a lot of kids is they have their intuition and they vocalize their thoughts about it, and they're told by their parents or the adults around them that they're wrong, and they believe that they're wrong. And for whatever reason, I didn't. And I think it was just because my intuition was so strong, and it was always, it just seemed to always lead me in the right path.
Direction. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting what you said about the kids, because I think that is so true. And I when we talk to students, et cetera, the three of us, sometimes this comes up when they're like, you know, stepping into the intuitive thing, and they're like, oh my God. And one of the things that I always say is that we all have some sort of intuitive abilities, especially growing up and being kids, but then society kind of beats it out of us, or our parents or whatever, not because they're, I don't mean beat it out
because
of us,
they had it and they were told they were wrong.
And they were told, and it was, whatever.
Yeah.
And then, yeah. And I think it's really funny because, and you guys may agree with this, I, kind of same thing as you were saying, Kathy, like I would know certain things about something or get like an icky feeling about somebody or whatever, the inside outside thing not matching. But then little things like the phone was going to ring, going to pick up the phone before the whatever. But here's the thing. I thought that was normal. I thought everybody had that.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And then after a while you started to be like, oh, I mean, do you know what I mean? So that was when it was like, like there's something going on here that I'm able to tap into, for lack of a better word, than other people. You know what I mean? Yeah.
That is the case. It's the feeling and the knowing. And I would not know how I knew.
But we also didn't question it.
No.
You also didn't question it. You just knew, and you didn't whatever. And it wasn't until you got older, then it was like you started to feel like, well, am I weird? So it was like you had this thing that was like great and you could do this and you didn't question it. And all of a sudden you started to, whether it's society or your parents or teachers or whatever, that's weird and you're not supposed to do that.
Right.
Did either of you guys have that stage where what did you say, Kath?
I got called a witch. Yeah.
Like how old were you?
Oh no, this was like one of my first corporate jobs. I got a nickname of, I was referred to as the Wicked Witch of West Kingston. I just had this, I had a good relationship with my boss, and I happened to mention about, the insides and outsides of certain people not matching, and me not going, what are you doing? But it was more like questioning, like, don't you see this? And then he would come to me and be like, well, what do you think of this person or this person? And then it became, oh, watch out for Kathy. She's the Wicked Witch of West Kingston. And and people used to say, if she doesn't like you, watch out. And it was, that's the thing is, there's no judgment. It's not about like or dislike. It's about an energy that we can just feel when your intuition is on, you could just feel it. And people can be saying one thing and you can tell that they're thinking something different. You know what I mean?
It's interesting what you just
match.
And it's interesting what you just said about like the Wicked Witch of West, whatever. But, and it's interesting to watch when people realize that about you, because there are some people that are kind of like,
oh, I've had several people.
You know what I mean? Because they think that we're looking at them and doing something.
Right.
You know what I mean? And we're not. Do you know what I mean? First of all, unethical. And I got to say, maybe there are psychics out there that are unethical. I'm assuming there probably are, just because that's the way of the world or whatever. Right. I can assure you, listeners, we aren't. So if you run into us at a party, we're not going, and like, try, we're not reading you.
We don't have the antennas going.
Yeah, the antennas going on or whatever. Now that said,
right. They're there.
That said, I'm sure we all have walked into a situation or been in a party or something where there's a lot of people and been like, oh yeah, no, and ourselves moved away. I know I have. Oh, just because, again, I'm not reading that person or whatever, but it's what you said, the energy. I can be like, oh yeah, no, that's not working for me. No, of course I don't say, hey dude, you're not working for me, like, or anything like that. But there's a little bit of a self-preservation there or something. So I want to move on and ask you guys about, and it was probably a different way back then, but now that we're doing this and we do this for a living, connecting with people and animals and helping them and everything. How do you guys receive information. And we're actually going to do another episode about this, about, you know, how breaking down the psychic senses. We're going to kind of do it that way or whatever. But we've learned that everybody kind of has one that's a little bit stronger, one of the senses that's a little bit stronger. How do you, and we all read kind of differently. Actually, we sort of read very similarly, the three of us, but and other psychics read like completely different. Ginger, what's your strongest sense? How do you read?
When I first recognized it, I thought it was feeling always. And the more that I opened up, particularly in animal communication is really what did it for me. It was knowing. I think knowing came before feeling, and my feeling backed it up. But because I could physically feel, like I had this thing where, and I think we talked about this one time, if both of those senses were working, I sort of intuitively would be saying, like, to the knowing, go away, because I need to feel this.
Yeah. And so just so everybody gets it, explain your definition of knowing. It's a hard thing. Like I'll say to people, I'm like, I don't know, I just know. I just know.
Yeah, and I'll put it in the context of a reading for me in animals, because that's where I first noticed it. But I might get, I'm connected to an animal, and I would get a feeling, let's say that the animal doesn't feel well, but I would have already known that. So I already know the animal doesn't feel well. I physically connect, you know, I energetically connect with the animal, and then I don't feel well. And I would be thinking, like I said, to the knowing, like, go step in the background, because I'm feeling my way through this. And then it was quite a while, I think, into it before I realized it was knowing. And then my other senses would back it up. And now, probably like you, having done this for quite some time, all the senses are engaged.
Yeah.
Knowing.
Let's say that senses. So we have knowing, you know, and I know they're clairvoyant or whatever, to make it easier for everybody, like knowing, hearing, seeing, feeling. What else?
There's 5. So
there's 5. So I'm missing one.
I always miss
Seeing, hearing,
feeling.
Yeah.
What am I missing?
I don't know. Yeah, there is a 5th one. I could never remember.
Yeah. So look how good we are. Anyway.
It's
Kathy,
funny,
what's your strongest?
I'm really similar to you, Jerry, in that I think when I was young, it was my knowing. It was definitely I just knew. I didn't know how I knew. I just knew. And here's the thing. When I say I knew, I didn't know specific details. And even when we do readings, we'll say, you know, things that make no sense to us. And I'll be like, blah, blah, blah. And it's a knowing. And I can't even think of an example. And I'll be like, I have no idea what I'm talking about. You know, it's just this knowing of a situation in these weird kind of vague terms. So I think when I was a kid, it was the knowing. And I tried to turn it off, I think, because I kept being told that I was wrong and that I was a kid and that I should be seen and not heard. And then what happened was my feeling came on strong. And that was harder because I didn't like the feeling one. It didn't serve me well, because to me, feeling is like you're feeling in your body what those other people are feeling. And so it really was, I went through a lot of my adult life kind of taking on other people's emotions. And I think that happens to a lot of people and they don't realize it. And it's exhausting. And so going back and like heightening my knowing again and kind of relying on that again, and then opening up my seeing and hearing, smelling's the other one. The seeing, opening up my seeing and hearing, which I've been working on the last few years, and going back to the knowing and relying on that more has helped me shut down the feeling part unless I'm intending to do it. So I'm able to go out and go shopping and not come home and need to take a nap for 3 hours because
Right.
You know.
And just so everybody knows, we are in, like I said before, in upcoming episodes talking about like breaking down those senses, but we're also going to actually do live readings, and we hope it's the next one, but who knows. Coming up in an episode, we are going to be doing some live readings with people so you can see kind of how it works. And it'll kind of maybe explain a little bit more what Kathy was saying. Like, I don't know what I'm saying here, because when we're doing this, it doesn't matter if it makes sense to us. It matters if it makes sense to our clients.
Right.
So yeah, you'll get more of that, just so y'all know, if you're like sitting there going, what, it'll all make sense as future episodes come out. I think my main sense or whatever is seeing, but it's really interesting because I see images, I see movies. I had just written a blog post recently about how I get information, and it's weird because I think it's a combination of seeing and knowing, because I'll get movies, TV commercials, stuff like that. So I'll be like, oh, see a TV commercial and be like, oh, okay, I'm supposed to explain that to the client, and something about the TV commercial, they're going to be like, oh my God, yeah. So I guess that's a little bit of knowing, but then I'm also seeing the TV commercial. Here's the other thing that's really funny, and we've talked about this before. I do not hear anything. I don't hear anything, but I'm...
What you do?
Yeah, right. I'm a writer by trade, so I see words. And it's really funny because I'll see or hear, like see a word or a phrase, and I'll even see them with like some with exclamation points or some bold or some just small letters. And the fact that like one is bold means one thing, and if it's small letters, it means another thing. So I think my visuals, the visuals and the knowing, and frankly, I don't even know if I'm even able to separate those, really. Do you know what I mean? Because it all sometimes comes in like, bleh, like so fast that I don't know, how'd you get that? I don't know. Do you know what I mean? I just got it. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's pretty cool how everybody has it. And I'll go back to, because we all became certified and studied together animal communication. And I remember being in classes with other people thinking, oh, that's so cool the way she gets information. I want to do it that way. Do you know what I mean? Like, as if it's not good enough that we're getting the information.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's pretty funny. So we also all teach animal communication or intuitive stuff or whatever. And one of the things that we talk about is the how we let it in. And I'll say this, and I think you guys are each going to agree with me. Like, we'll have students that will be like, I'm trying. And so what do we say to that? Stop trying. Do you know what I mean? Because the trying gets in your way. It's more of an allowing thing as opposed to a trying. Kathy, you said you had a thought about that.
Yeah. So I have in a class that I'm helping to teach right now, there's a student who's really struggling with this one particular technique. And it's because she's just trying so hard. And I was meditating the other day, and you're supposed to clear your mind, but a lot of times what happens is I meditate and then I go into that like that place where the information just flows in about whatever I need to know about. And I had this memory, and I meant to look it up before this podcast, and I'm dating myself here, but do you remember back, I don't know, it must have been in the 80s, on the Sunday comics, they would have these, they were called the Magic Eye, and it was like this picture, but there was a picture within a picture that you had to like stare at this picture of something to see the picture within it. Please tell me you know what I'm talking about.
Okay, so Ginger and I are both older than you, so I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
If you were older, you'd know, although I don't know. Yeah, it's called the Magic Eye, and it's like this picture that's just all like geometric shapes or something. But then
it's like a hologram kind of thing?
Optical illusion?
So it's an optical illusion kind of thing. But if you stare at it long enough, you'll see like, oh, there's a tiger in that picture, in that.
Okay.
I was staring at. And I was a teenager, and so we'd get the Sunday comic, and I'd try so hard to see it, and I could never see it until I would just relax and actually I was thinking it was my eyes unfocusing, but it was actually my eyes and my brain unfocusing. And stare and not staring, but just gazing at it. You're going to have to Google now magic eye.
Well, here's the thing, but I know what you're talking about. Okay, dating myself again. Do you all remember in the mall, it was a store called Spencer's Gifts?
Yeah.
Okay, right. And they would have, and I don't know if it's called holograms. I think it's called holograms or something, but it would be this thing with just like squigglies all over it.
Mm-hmm.
And there would be a picture within it, but you did have to like, if you were like this, you're going to miss it. But if you just kind of like, almost like blurred your eyes a little bit.
Exactly.
So I think it's like exactly the same thing.
I think we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
And the thing is that like, right. So to blur your eyes, it's the same thing with letting the intuitive information come in, is you have to blur your brain and turn off that left side of your brain, that thinking side, to let the information come in.
That is so cool, because I've never thought of it that way, but that's exactly what it is. In order to do that, you almost had to just like, relax your eyes and you had to not focus.
You have to not focus.
You had to relax your eyes.
Right.
That's a brilliant way to say it. Oh my God, I'm totally stealing that and using that with students. That is like a brilliant way to say that.
And now
what about you, Ginger? The allowing as opposed, what's that, Cass?
Now Magic Eye is going to have a big uptick on Google.
Yeah, exactly.
Our 10 listeners are going to be now Googling Magic Eye.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, it is that allowing thing. And I even have to remind myself of that sometimes. If I'm in a reading and I'm getting frustrated or something and it's not coming in or whatever, I'll have to say, okay, blah, 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 blah. Allow. Yes. Allow it. Just let it in. Stop trying.
Stop pushing. It's the push energy that doesn't allow it in.
That's the way. That's a great way to say it too. So how do you guys, because we always want to try to give to our listeners here, like, okay, let's throw out a couple pieces of how to do it. That's one of them. Allow, don't try. Allow, don't try. Ginger, you said something before about the noticing part, I think.
Yeah, I think and that's how I recognized intuition. I said I believed that there was always something more, and I do. I never felt alone ever, because I always knew something was out there, and I must have been picking up things from out there and not quite understanding. But when you start to notice these little synchronicities, like, oh, that just happened, and I just thought of it. Or Jerry, you had mentioned, that the phone would ring. I would think of, Mary, and then the phone would ring. And Mary and I always have this conversation about, we call it a little zing. Like I get a little zing when I know I've made a connection. I can't really liken it to anything, maybe like a little jolt of adrenaline, but there's some little ping when something happens that I connect to. And that's the stuff that I started to pay attention to. The synchronicity of
the synchronicities. Yeah. And I think for me, when I'm a big studier of the law of attraction and stuff like that. And there's going to be a lot of people that disagree with me on this, but there are no such things as coincidences. Mm-hmm. There are no such thing as coincidence. Now I know most people, that's just a coincidence. Maybe it's just us in the business that we're in. There are no coincidences, that everything is something. You know what I mean? We learn this in mediumship too, that your loved ones, as you're talking about, Ginger, like somebody's always with you or whatever, they're always with you, and they're always putting things in your way to see. It's just, so I guess my point is, it's not that no one's out there trying to contact you, it's that you're not open to it, or you're not noticing it, or you're not realizing that that's what it is. Where when you're sitting there, think of Forrest Gump at the end, when the little feather like comes down or whatever, that's not just a feather coming down in front of it. It means something. Right. You know what I mean? All those little parts and pieces, those little things that we notice. So how should we tell everybody to notice that? For me, it's kind of being more present. And especially in this, sorry, there's a dog shaking its collar under me. Being more present and living like in the moment. In this lifestyle, we're like, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this. Multitasking. I really realized recently, I told myself, okay, enough with the multitasking. I'm done with the multitasking. And now I'm literally finding myself, right now, I'm going to pick up this pencil and put it on my desk. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes I actually have to do that because there's so much going on. but then I'm missing everything. And it's funny because when we get ready for a reading, I mean, I have a little ritual that I do before a reading, and it's a letting go, and it's a centering, and it's an allowing, and it's an opening up. And that's why I'm in that space. And recently I've been telling myself, well, I should be in that space all the time.
And doesn't it feel great when you're in that space? I want to be in that space all the time. I love that feeling.
Exactly.
Fully present. Yeah.
Exactly. Fully present. So it is. And I know we talk about meditation and, oh my God, I don't have time to meditate and da, 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 da. You know what? Meditation can be much more than just you're sitting there, with your legs crossed and your hands like, oh, like this. Meditation can just be listening to a song. Meditation can be doing one thing.
Staring out the window and watching the birds.
Exactly. And feel all those times when you're that present. And I think it almost comes down to that. It's just that, being that present and that open. So it's a clearing of your mind and an allowing. We keep going back to the same thing as opposed to trying. Right. It's a clearing of your mind and an allowing. The thing is
that once you clear your mind, you're able to hear what's coming in or recognize those knowings that come in or those feelings. And, and then the next step is to listen and to act on it. Yes. Because I still struggle with it. And it's one of my funniest stories is a couple of years ago, I used to work in retail. So after years of not being able to even go shopping in like malls and stuff, because I just couldn't stand the energy. I had done some work and there was a store that I loved, the Container Store, shout out. And I worked there for a couple of years, but I was visiting there one day and I had one of my dogs with me, and he's a therapy dog and he's lovely and he's perfectly well behaved. And I'm, in addition to an animal communicator, I do pet therapy stuff, and I'm an evaluator for therapy animals. And I was walking him into the store and I had this random thought go through my head about how embarrassing it would be if I brought my dog into the store and if he pooped in the store, because it had happened before with other animals. And it was one of those, oh, that's a weird thought to have. And then I just continue walking in the store and I stopped to say hi to someone. And I happened to look down at my lovely little perfect therapy dog who's squatting to poop. And I literally, thank God he's little, I scooped him up literally with my hand under his butt in case he was too far into the process and got him outside. And I just was like, well, you dummy, you deserve that. Like
you're walking into the store, you get this hit.
Wouldn't it be weird if my dog pooped in the store? Like how embarrassing would that be? And then 10 seconds later, he's getting ready to poop in the store.
Which is another great point. It's those ones that come in from out of nowhere. Yeah. Like a thought comes in from out of nowhere and then you're like, well, where the heck did that come from? Pay attention to those.
Track of those. That's what it is.
Yes. You have to pay attention and not just be like, oh, that was a random thought to have. Yeah. My dog has he'd never had an accident ever anywhere. Like he's perfect.
Yeah. That's so funny.
And it was, crisis averted, but yeah, it was such
funny. Those things that come out of nowhere that seem like they have nothing to do with anything that's going on. That is brilliant. Thank you for that laugh today. So we're going to wind down here or whatever, but I did want to ask, so spirituality, enlightenment, being aware of, these psychic senses and everything. I believe that we all feel that this is that there's a push in this. This is becoming more and more normal, more and more out there. Is that just us because we're in it, or do you feel that this is a thing, that it's becoming more and more acceptable and out there? Do you know what I'm saying? It feels like it's a thing, right?
It's like becoming. It feels like it's a thing. I mean, you can't really open a magazine or look at a blog or probably a podcast or music or anything where there isn't this thread. And I think it is saving us. I think, you know, the world is kind of chaotic, but there's so much more out there that gives people comfort. And
I think that's what it is. It's the comfort thing is people are looking for that comfort. There's something bigger than all the chaos that's going on. Yes.
And I hope that there is a shift towards realizing that we're all one. You know, politics shouldn't divide us, race shouldn't divide us, gender, whatever, nothing should divide us, because we really are one. And I look at, you know, I posed the question about this, like, is it just us because we're in this arena and whatever? Right. But look at Marianne Williamson, who wrote A Course in Miracle, who is exceptionally spiritual, you know, and I know she dropped out of the presidential race, but 4 years ago, 8 years ago, she wouldn't have even been able to get into the race and stand a chance of, you know, I really think that even that brought up the, you know, it's like the vibration is raising and or rising, and it's really cool. I think it's necessary, and maybe not happening as fast as we want it to.
But the fact that it's happening, and again, that you know, it's that question: are we comfortable being out there and talking about the things that we do because we're, you know, between the ages of 50 and 60, or and we don't care, or like, you know, whatever, or is it more acceptable?
I definitely think it's more acceptable. And I think if you look at the spiritual practices that have been building, at least in my area, I'm in Massachusetts, the yoga, wellness salons, people leaving corporate workforces to do this kind of work to raise people's awareness. I definitely think I say it's a trend because you look at that as a marketing thing, but I think it's a movement forward for all of us.
Yeah. And also, like we had talked about meditation in schools, meditation in prison, meditation with our law enforcement, you know, have another way to deal with really difficult situations that they're turning to, you know, what would have been thought of as woo-woo, you know, Reiki being offered in hospitals to patients as alternative, you know, or in addition to traditional therapies, you know, there's pet therapy, there's Reiki, there's all this stuff. And it's definitely shifting. I'm not sure it's the same all throughout the country. I'm in the Northeast. I'm right there with you, Ginger. But it's definitely shifting. It's on the news all the time.
It's on the news all the time. So, and that's pretty, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Okay, so we kind of have to wrap up here, but I wanted to say thank you to everybody who has been here with myself and Kathy and Ginger. We love doing this. We're very excited about this. Again, our podcasts are on iTunes, so if you go to our website, www.thepsychicwives, I guess I don't have to say the www part, everybody gets that part, thepsychicwives.com, you're going to see more information about us, our personal or business websites, each of our individual business and the podcast. You're going to see the link there to iTunes. You can do that right there. And then also going forward, things to look at. We're going to talk about animal communication because that's one thing that we all have in common going forward. Then we're also going to talk about the individual things that we do or whatever. And then hopefully coming up soon, right after we talk about animal communication, when we're actually going to do some live readings. So that is coming up as well. You can also find us on Facebook. We're just The Psychic Wives on Facebook. That's who we are. I hate to say it, we're just The Psychic Wives because
we're so much
Psychic Wives. We're so much more. What do we say? Everyday living with a twist. Yeah. So thank you, everybody. Again, look for us on iTunes and look for our episodes weekly coming at you. So we will see everybody soon.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye. Bye.